covering the sport a long time, I think it's the hardest ever.
I feel like people say that every year, and I think it's always true. The sport, especially in the U.S., has grown leaps and bounds in the past decade or so. And you look at the all-time marks now. We've had 3 guys break 1250 in 1 year, whereas in the past, you might get 1 guy that would break 13 like every other year. So the depth is increasing a ton. You look at something like the 1500, where the U.S. goes 135 at the Olympics last year. I think best case scenario for the U.S. is that if you can make the team in the 5K, you have a really good shot at medal. It gets harder and harder every year. There's really stiff competition. Guys that are younger and younger are training harder and harder, and that is just producing just way more depth at younger ages. So we have a really, really competitive 5K team, but my focus right now is the 10K. That's tomorrow. So
I was just going to say, you will take that on after the 10K.
Exactly, yeah. So 10K's first. Again, very stiff competition. It doesn't have quite the same depth as the 5K, but still a very, very competitive field. Several sub-27 guys, which usually they're, you look back to 10, 15 years ago, you've got 1 guy maybe, that breaks up 27 minutes. So every year it gets more competitive. I wouldn't be surprised in 5 years if people are saying, oh, this is the most competitive year ever, and they're right. I think every year it's going to get harder and harder.
Looking at the crop of young guys is coming up all the time. Did you expect that it would be guys like Nico and Graham, seeing them kind of rise up? Did you expect that it would be them who are now kind of your compatriots at this level?
Seeing what those guys did in college, you would expect that they would continue to do well in the pro ranks. The thing about this sport is you never know what's coming next. A good metric when I was in high school was breaking 4 minutes. That people thought was a really good predictor of future success. But when you looked at it, it actually was kind of a 50-50 indicator. So sometimes people make it through, sometimes people don't. When you look at what Nico and Graham did in college, now that they have made it in the pro ranks, you look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. But sometimes there's people that do really well at certain stages, but then it doesn't always translate. So those guys are mega talented. The times and performances that they were able to do in college. When I was in college, nobody was doing anything even remotely close to that. So, and again, similar to the answer I gave earlier, I think in 10 years you're going to look back and there'll be a handful, maybe even more, of college kids that are breaking 27, breaking 13. I think the depth is going to continue to snowball, which is a good thing. There's going to be a point where Nico and Graham are the old guys, and there's this new crop of guys coming in. I'll be way out of the sport by then, but it's going to keep snowballing, and it's a really good thing. These championships, it might be an advantage if you're from a different country and don't have to really peak for your national championship, but if you can survive the training required to get on one of these teams, you have a really good shot at medal.
How does it make you feel that you're not necessarily the only American guy that is a medal threat at these events anymore?
It's kind of a cool feeling. There were times in the past where it's a little isolating to think of yourself as competing for a medal before you were able to, or before anyone around you was really doing that. So I'm sure watching Cole Hocker win gold opened the minds of so many people. For me, watching Matt Centrowitz and Galen Rupp do really well at global championships when I was a kid kind of opened my mind to think okay, the Americans, we can really do something here. So I think it's a physical snowball of people are training harder and harder because that's what's required. And it's a mental snowball too of hey man, if Grant can medal, maybe I can medal. If Centro can medal, maybe I can medal. If Yard can medal, if Cole can medal, it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy.
You won both these events, the trials last year. Do you think you're better right now than you were back then?
I hope so. I mean, it's really hard to compare fitness year over year. I think I'm in really good shape. I hope I'm in better shape. It's kind of tough to compare, but I've had a really good build. I feel confident. I feel loose and ready. So, last year I think there was a little more pressure just because of an Olympic year. I just changed coaches. I just changed training situations. I feel a lot more just continuity this year where I know my training works. I know my coaching works. I know my setup works, so just have to get out and execute it.
I assume that coaching move proved out to be a good thing given your performance in Paris. Do you expect that to continue to improve, or was that a one-time benefit?
That's a good question. I hope it continues. The things that made me successful last year, I think will continue to make me successful this year, and I think my races so far have shown that. I've had really good momentum this year. Sometimes coming off an Olympic year, people kind of are a little tired out mentally or physically and have a slow start. I don't really feel that too much, so I think that was a good sign, and I think as the year's gone on, I feel more and more confident that I'm getting my peak right, and I love working with my coach Mike, and it's worked really well. So the style of training is accumulative based. It's a lot of threshold work. So the more of that I get under my belt, hopefully the better performances.
And you mentioned you can't look past this week as you look ahead to Tokyo. Can you tell me a little bit about what your prep was for this week and how that looks compared to what the prep might look like for Tokyo?
It's kind of weird looking back to even last year. This time, exactly 1 year ago, I was getting ready for the biggest race of my life in Paris. So the year is really stretched out now. Because of that, the training has to stretch out as well. So been really intentional about when I'm pushing and when I'm not pushing in training, and a little bit of a taper going into this week, which feels good because I've been training hard the past month. The early part of my season was defined by indoors, and then after that I was locked into Grand Slam, took a little bit of downtime, and then now it's been a really, really solid build up to now. The build up to Tokyo, people say, September, it's so far away. Hey, that's only a month and a half away. So even after this weekend, as long as everyone's season goes according to plan, you only have 5 weeks of training left. So you have enough time for one big kind of month-long training cycle, and then you're back to it. So this is all my focus is on this weekend right now. I'll get to the World Championships when I get there.
It's been reported that Grand Slam track was trying to pay out Kingston prize money by the end of July. Today is the last day of July. You won $100,000 there. Have you been paid yet?
That is correct. Tomorrow is technically the last day of July.
But you are right on that. Sorry.
So they do have a day.
Yeah.
The last update I heard was that by the end of July they wanted Kingston prize money out. It has not hit my bank account or anyone else's, as far as I know. So fingers crossed. But tomorrow would be the last day before I think people get pretty upset.
And would you be upset if it's not in your bank account by August 1st?
I would be. The Grand Slam, I think there were some fantastic ideas. Maybe execution was a little off. I think it would be in everyone's best interest, whether you are in Grand Slam or support Grand Slam or don't, if they pay the athletes out. And the thing is, if the money doesn't come through, then no athlete is ever going to want to take a chance on a new idea. No investor is going to want to take a chance on a new idea. It's just going to be an all-around bad thing for the sport if things don't come through. So my fingers are crossed. I hope it all works. If it drags out a bit longer, I think a lot of people will be up in arms, and we'll see how that concludes. Ideally, at this point in the season, I'd just be focusing on running and not all that stuff, but I think it might come to a head pretty soon.
Given the uncertainty that's played out around that league this year, would you consider doing it again in 2026 if it does exist?
I guess the main point of your question would be is if it does exist. If they aren't able to pay out the debts that they have for this past year, I don't think it will exist for next year. And even if it did somehow exist and they're still in debt to athletes, no new athlete is going to sign on for the following year. So it's kind of a wait and see situation, I think. I was only on a 1-year contract, so I was only going to Grand Slam in 2024. So when the time comes, I'll make the decision for 2025 was the year I was signed on for. 2026, I'll think about that when and if the money hits my bank account.
Are you glad you took that risk and tried it this year?
I think looking back, I am. With the information I had at the time, it was a really good idea, and I think it still has really good potential. I think I really want things to work. I don't want it to come to a lawsuit and a big headache and Grand Slam being crushed and then everyone saying I told you so. I don't really want. I don't think that's a good outcome for anybody. So I still have my fingers crossed. Tomorrow I'm focused on racing. I won't be checking my bank account to see if the money came in. But after the weekend, I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion.
And you said no athlete's been paid? Like, is that something they told you, or is that something you've gathered from talking to other athletes in terms of the Kingston prize money?
That's something I've learned from talking to other athletes. They've paid out the Kingston appearance fees, but not the Kingston prize money yet. And yeah, the original date was the end of the month. So we'll see.
End of April, you mean?
Sorry. The original dialogue was that after everyone's drug test cleared, the money would come through. After the Philadelphia Grand Slam and after the LA Slam was canceled, we were told the end of July. So that's the latest information we have, and I think for most people within the organization, that's the latest information they have, and that's tomorrow. So we'll see. I guess talk to people on August 1st and see what the update is.
Grant, you mentioned Grand Slam track. With that, you're doing the double with the 3K and the 5K. You're doubling this weekend. Obviously, it's different with the 5K and the 10K, but how does doubling in a short time span like that with Grand Slam, how does that kind of help prepare you for this weekend?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. Doubling physically is difficult and mentally it's difficult. Focusing on one thing and then adjusting for the next thing just a few days later. I'm pretty used to it from trying to double at most U.S. championships and global championships. The Grand Slam meets were another opportunity to try out the double. It's hard. Usually in that second race, you don't feel 100%, and you kind of have to accept that mentally and make the most of what you got. So, it's good prep for sure. And I think I have the advantage of doubled at several U.S. championships in the past, so I know the feeling.
On top of that, just to add to it, the 10K is first this weekend. What do you feel like, in just your opinion, maybe everyone's different, but the 10K first and the 5K, what's harder to prepare for? Is it the 10,000 because you're staring at the lap counter from 25 down, or is it the 5,000 because you already have the 10K in the legs?
For the double, I think the 10K, well, it depends on if there's a round for the 5K. The 10K is usually nice because it's a straight final. And then often for the 5K, there's a round. At this time, there will not be a round for the 5K, so that's a straight final too. I'd say you feel more pressure for the first one. The second one, you feel a little fatigued, but you already had a taste of competition. So you feel a little more loose, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.